This week I got a very interesting question, but as you will see, the answer turned out to be rather long, but I think it was still worth it. So instead of just having one long answer, I've now decided to divide this video into two. So there will be two parts, both released on the same day, so you'll be able to watch both of them. So let's get started with part one. This week we will look at a very interesting question that is about how to actually write programs. I'm Joachim and you are watching Python Bonanza. Yes, this week I got a very interesting question that I thought we would tackle, because when I work with education and teach people Python, this is something that I very often stumble upon, and that is that people actually know the language pretty good and they should be able to write programs, you think, but the problem is, how do I get started? How do I go from an idea to something that is actually starts at least to solve the problem? So let's look at this question. So it is from someone called Midas, and the question is, I think I know Python syntax rather well, but what I can't get my head around is how I go from an idea to actually write some code. So that is actually essentially what we are talking about here. How do you take your idea into something that you can start to build up on and develop? So Midas here thinks that this is very overwhelming, and I can understand that, because if you are given a task that you need to solve, or if you have an idea yourself for something that you want to do, then you start to think of the whole problem. I need to do this and then that and that and that, and all that combined together can be very overwhelming. So how do you work with that, and how do you do something with it? So what we should do is, first of all, we need a problem. So I have a problem here that we will work on in this episode, and we'll see how we can go ahead and do something with that. So in this case, we have the problem here. So we will have a text file, and in it will be 100,000 names. So it's just a text file with one name on each line. So we need to figure out how many duplicate names we have in that file. So by the problem statement here alone, we understand that, well, all names will not be unique. There will be duplicates in the file. So we need to figure out how many duplicate names there are. And then also we want a list of the 10 names that has the most duplicates. So the names that occurs most times in the file. So that is the problem. So of course, if we start to think about that and try to do everything at once, we will get into trouble, because there are too many parameters here. So we need to break this down somehow. So how do we do that? Well, we can start to sketch out an idea for how we should get along. And the key concept here is try to find something that you can focus on, a small part of the main problem, and focus just on that and ignore the other parts. So here we have a little list. So we can say that we will, first of all, need to figure out how to read the file line by line, and by that get one name and then one name and then one name and so on. So that's the first thing, and we will only focus on that. And when we have that in place, when we know how to do that and it works, then we can continue to the next thing. So the next thing here will be for us to, we need to store the names in memory somehow. So we need some sort of data structure to store all the names in. So that will be the next step, and see how we can do that. But we don't have to really bother about what data structure to use yet. Maybe when we get more experience, we will know that, okay, of course, this data structure will be perfect for this. But if we don't worry. Just so we know that this is what we need to do. We need to find some sort of data structure that we can use for this task. And then when that is done, when we have that in place, then it might be so that we need to check that this name that I read, maybe I need to check whether it's already in this data structure that we stored all the previous names we've seen. Maybe, maybe not, but at this point I'm listing it here anyhow, because I will start out with that anyway. And then we need some sort of counter. So we need to have a way to count how many times I've seen each name, so I know when we have duplicates. And for the duplicates, that is when the counter is larger than 1. So if I count how every time I see a name, if I've never seen it before, I set the counter to 1. If I've seen the name before, I will increase the counter by 1. And at the end, all names that has a counter larger than 1, they will be duplicates. And then at the end, we need to figure out a way to find the most frequent names, the names with the most duplicates in the file. So that is basically the breakdown, and I will show you in code how we do this soon. Okay, so how to solve the problem is kind of doing one thing at a time, as I said. So we'll read each line from the file, just that, focus on that, see that it works. And when that is in place, then we go ahead and select this structure to store the names in. But we can think about that later on, but we have it on our list at least. And then we need to find a solution to solve all parts of the problem. So that can be a number of steps as well. And in our case, we need to find how many names that are duplicates and also find the top 10 names. So that is kind of 2 things that we need to figure out how to do. And we will reach a solution, but we shouldn't stop there. And instead, when things work and the problem is solved, we should go back and look at what we've done and see if we can make this better, improve on it, refine it. And improving the code can mean that it's more readable for someone who's reading our code. It can run faster, maybe. Maybe we will use the resources of the computer better. So maybe we use less memory or do other things that will make this program run more efficient. But that is not anything we need to bother ourselves with initially. When we have a solution, that is when we can do that. Okay, so let's have a look at some code. Let's write the code for this and see how this will work. So I have my editor here, and let's zoom in on that so we only see that. And what we can see here is that I actually have already 2 files. One file that I called names.py, and then we have a text file that is called names. And this text file is the file with all the names in it. And if you want to try this out yourself, I will actually provide you with a link to this text file so you can play around with that if you want to. This file, I actually just generated it. I found a list online with 1,000 male names, 1,000 female names, and 1,000 last names, and then I just randomly matched them together to create this file. So that is what we have to work with. Okay, so the first part here was figure out a way to read all the names from the file, one name at a time. So the first step here will be just to do that and just print them on the screen to see that it actually works. So working with files, we can do it in a number of ways, but a good way to do it is to use the with statement here. So with open, and then we need to provide, and of course I should spell it right, with open, there we go. So this will open a file, and I need to provide a name for this file, and that will be names.txt, and that will be as a string, like that. And then this one is actually optional because I need to specify the mode here in which I want to work with the file, and R here in a string means I'm going to read from the file. This is actually the default value, but I think it's a good habit to always state what my intentions with this file is. So W is for writing to the file, A is for appending to existing file, and R is reading from the file. So we want R in this case. And then I need to have a variable here that I can work with. So I call this infile. So this is the one I will use. So with that in place, and this with statement, what it does is when I leave the with statement here at the very end, the file will be closed for me. So I don't need to close the file myself. So that is a neat thing. So you should use the with statement when you're working with files. Okay, so the next part here is that I just want to go through the file line by line. So I can do this in a number of ways. Now, in this case, I need to be careful because if this is a huge file and I try to read the whole file into memory at once, it might not fit. It might be larger than the memory. In this case, it's not. I know that there will be 100,000 names and I will be able to fit that in memory, so I can safely do that. So I will have a for loop here. So what we can start out with is just say for name in, and then I can say in file, and then we have a number of methods here: read, read line, and read lines. So I can use read line. That would read one single line and give it back to me. Read lines would read all the lines into a sequence, and then I can work with that sequence. So this will read the entire file at once. This will read one line at a time. Well, let's start with read line actually. We don't need to read the whole file. So this will actually give me one line. I call this name now because I know that in this file there is one name on each line. So if we just print name now, like that, and then we run it, we'll see that, well, it read one line. So it just read the first line here. So this will not take us through the whole file at once. It would read one line and then I will iterate over that. So then I would need another iteration to go through all the lines. So let's change this to read lines now and rerun it. And then we can see that, well, now it looks better. I get all the names, but I get this weird extra blank line in between every name. The reason for that is that this text file here actually will have a line break at each line here. We don't see it, but that's why all the names come on different lines. So that will be part of the name I'm reading here. So there are a number of ways I could handle this. So one thing I could do is strip, and strip will take away any white space at the beginning and at the end of this string. And white space is space, tab, and new line. So if I do that, when I print it, I will not change it, will still contain that. So then we see that I got rid of all those blank lines. So this seems like a good start. So now I can read the file and read all the 100,000 names from it.